Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is African Americans and slavery, and we're fortunate to have with us this morning to talk about African Americans and the institution of slavery and the impact not only of slavery during the time of slavery, but the impact that slavery has had in later years. With us is our guest for today, Miss Alana McLaughlin. And of course, Alana, let me welcome you to the show this morning. And I don't think I have to introduce you to our guest this morning because this is your 5th year with us. Many of our audience will recall that you started with us at the age of 8, and you've been with us since then. And we're just delighted to have you here with us this morning to talk about what we consider to be a very, very important topic, and to talk about a topic that I'm sure that you have a lot of information about because we've discussed it quite recently. Let's talk about, first of all, your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of leading you to us this morning, and then we'll talk about African Americans and slavery.
Well, like Dr. Haney already said, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am only 13. Well, I turned 14 this year, but something that really led me to the show was the natural spark that I think that I was born with, that I inherited from you. As a child, I really loved to talk, act and dance around and stuff, and then I realized that I had a vocabulary that exceeded my years by far, and I had this natural kind of fearlessness in front of cameras and large audiences, and I really thought, and so did you think, that we could really put this to use by educating people on subjects that are commonly known, but with facts that aren't commonly known. And so that's really what led me to the show this morning, and now, about 6 or 7 years later, here I am.
Go on.
And so I'm only in the 8th grade right now, and I go to John Early Museum Magnet Middle. I'm heavily involved in my church and organizations such as the Junior National Young Leaders Conference and WKU's Gifted Program Center, and they have programs such as, the Summer Camp for Verbally and Mathematically Precocious Youth and the Summer Camp for Academically Talented Students. And I've attended both, and they're very nice. I recommend them to anybody. And so I am also heavily involved in my school. I am a cheerleader, I am in the debate club, the band, and I'm also a part of the Metro Honor Band. I play trumpet. And so I'm just heavily involved in anything I can really get into that can help me better myself and help me grow and mature.
And you're beginning your 5th year in a real sense with us on this particular show, and today you've decided to talk about African Americans and slavery. Let's start off by giving us some information in reference to African Americans and the institution of slavery, Alana.
Well, if you're not familiar with what slavery is, slavery was the mass torture and genocide in some sense of African Americans back during the 1800s. And basically, what a lot of people overlook is the fact that we have come so far from slavery, yet we're slowly slipping back into it. And I'll be elaborating more on this in the second segment, but for right now, I'm going to say this. At first, we were enslaved by different races, and now we're enslaving ourselves. And it's crazy, but when you really think about it, the actions we do and things like that are really pulling us back into history, because since people don't know it, we're bound to repeat it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so in a sense, Alana, you want to talk today about the institution of slavery that was introduced into this country, I think we've indicated, in 1619 and was ended in 1865, almost 300 years of that institution. And I think that you would like to talk about some aspects of that institution during this second segment, and to get our audience not only involved in understanding the institution, but also what African Americans especially, and not only African Americans, but African Americans especially, were concerned about it. And that's where we talk about the ending of the institution of slavery in 1865 with the end of the Abolitionist movement. And so you want to talk about African Americans and the Abolitionist movement, and what we'll do, we'll have you to start. What about the Abolitionist movement? Why don't you, we've got a minute before our first commercial break, why don't you say something about those individuals who wanted to end slavery?
Well, for every terrible thing that happens in history, there are always those few brave souls who fight against it or choose to tell their story. Like for the Holocaust, there was Anne Frank. For slavery, which I'm going to be talking about, there were people such as, Harriet Beecher Stowe and, David Walker. And for the civil rights movement, there's Coretta Scott King, Dr. King, Malcolm X. And so that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about in the second segment and people like those brave souls who chose to revolt against and to tell their story and to help fight against it.
And so you're prepared this morning to tell us about their stories. And what we're going to do, we're going to take this first commercial break, and we're going to be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
But I was going to say that, but it sounded wrong. Okay.
No,
and it was the
Liberator. That's
Liberator.
That's one of the most important.
For some reason, I almost said the Anti-Federalist.
No, that's John Adams.
Yeah.
Liberator was one of the few white newspapers that had regional and national coverage.
Yeah,
it was called the Liberator. He said, "I will not equivocate. I will speak." And he would not shut up in a real sense. There's a lot of famous things that William L. Garrison said in American history in reference to his opposition to the institution of slavery. So we wanted you to talk about that.
William L. Garrison.
Okay, so
David Walker.
When we come back, we start talking about the abolitionists.
And appealing for articles in Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
You got to say something about the slave, about what they were appealing against. You know, about slave, how they worked and what.
No.
Okay. 1 minute. Okay, so
Harriet Beecher Stowe, William L. Garrison, David Walker. And if we have time, Frederick Douglass. I'll throw it in
well,
there.
you always try to find time for Frederick Douglass. He's one of the great.
I always find time for Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, well,
my life motto.
Yeah, he's indeed very, very significant.
Yeah, he was an aide to Lincoln. Like, talk about getting to the big leagues, you know, escaping slavery and then being an aide to the president. Oof.
Yeah, and this he did.
Yeah, well, no.
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is the abolitionist movement and African Americans, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about African Americans and the abolitionist movement, Alana McLaughlin. And Alana has already given us some information in reference to her background, education, and why she feels that she is qualified in a real sense to talk about slavery and the abolitionist movement. And so, Alana, let's see if we can pick up where we left off before our first commercial break, and to have you to start dealing with the abolitionists, those individuals who opposed slavery and some of the impacts that they had on American society.
So if you're just tuning in the first subject, I really said that for every terrible event in history, there's always someone who either shares their story and their experiences to give us an inside knowledge, or there's someone who fights against it. Like, for instance, during the Holocaust, Anne Frank kept her diary, and her father, Otto Frank, decided to publish it after her death to show people what the Holocaust did to them and how the Holocaust really was. And during slavery, we had abolitionists. We had people such as William L. Garrison, which is one of the few Caucasian people who decided to rise against slavery. And basically, he just decided to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to fight against this to my death, and I do not care what y'all threaten to do to me. And he's also known for being an editor of a newspaper called The Liberator. And this was an anti-slavery newspaper, which was one of the few back then. And he, in a real sense, he decided to fight for those who didn't have a voice. He was the voice of the people, and he dedicated his life and his safety to showing the world that this is not right and that this is something that we should end. And another big person who was an abolitionist was David Walker. David Walker is known for writing and appealing for articles. And if you're not familiar with it, I'll give you my favorite quote from it, which basically says, "It is no more harm to kill a man who is trying to kill you than it is to take a drink of water when thirsty." And basically, to break that down for you, it's saying that it is not bad to kill someone who's trying to kill you. It's like, you know, kill or be killed. And that's basically all that an Appeal in 4 articles mainly talked about. It was revolt against slavery, you know, kill or be killed, give your life for this, because, you know, they're going to kill you, so you might as well kill them first. And that's what a lot of abolitionists thought back then, because imagine being in a situation where it's someone else's life or yours. You may not want to believe this, but you're most likely going to choose your life, because if someone's beating you, torturing your family, you're going to want to fight against it. And that's what a lot of slaves did. You know, John Brown's revolt in West Virginia. And I was very fortunate to be able to visit Harper's Ferry last year and be able to see where the revolt took place. And, you know, so many people gave their life for this. And John Brown gave his life for John Brown's revolt. And all these things were wake-up calls to so many people, like, is what I'm doing right? You know, would I enjoy someone doing this to me? Mm-hmm. And so aside from William L. Garrison and, you know, John Brown and David Walker, there were so many women. And I think a very famous woman is a woman by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe. If you're unfamiliar with Miss Stowe, she was the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was another one of those, you know, books, pamphlets, articles that basically just slammed slavery, condemned it, said it was a sin and so many things. And it was outstanding, and it was really heartwarming to see that so many people woke up and smelled the roses, and they finally believed that this was wrong. And so, you know, us African Americans and all the other races that were enslaved, we are forever grateful to those Harriet Beecher Stowes and to those William L. Garrisons of the world, because without them, we would have still been enslaved, or our story wouldn't have gotten out as widespread as it did. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin sold over 300,000 copies in its first year. And that is a lot. Like modern day, that's a lot of copies of that. So just imagine 3,000 people, you know, I'm going to say about a good chunk of them are saying, wow, this woman's so stupid. And then there's always that percentage of them that are praising her for saying thank you and crying and just on their knees thanking her, because you give insight to the horrors that we go through. And you are risking your life for people, most of them you don't even know. Just for strangers, but you feel their pain in a way, and you know that what people are doing to them is wrong. And so we are always thankful for those types of people, because without them, we don't even want to think what would be going on. Just think about, for instance, Anne Frank and the Holocaust, and a bunch of other powerful Holocaust writers. Without them, would we really have an eye-to-eye view of what the Holocaust was really like? Because